So here's another video highlighting the ground behavior of the motion queuing algorithm. And I'm in an aircraft on ground, and I would like to show you a couple of points about the implementation of it. Now, first, from the outside, you can see here the aircraft is at an angle pitched up, and the reason is that the nose gear is longer than the main gear, and that is intentional in this aircraft for performance reasons. And that means that the aircraft is continuously tilted up while on the ground, at least in that configuration. Now, as you can see, that is represented in the motion queuing algorithm with the platform tilted up slightly. Now, that might give you the impression as if I was using the ADI pitch value to pitch up that platform, but that's not the case. The reality is that while this aircraft is tilted up slightly, gravity acts vertically, and there's a component of that vertical gravity along the aircraft's longitudinal axis and perpendicular to the aircraft longitudinal axis. And the component that is along the aircraft's longitudinal axis is what tilts this thing up. I could try to show you here acceleration longitudinal 0.05, and the vertical here is 1, but in fact it's 0.99 there. Anyway, so the reason for the tilt up is not the pitch of the aircraft, it is the acceleration component of the aircraft. Now take a look at it when I do brake release and braking the aircraft, some thrust, some brakes, and when I release the brakes, the platform makes a jolt forward. That's a pretty abrupt motion. That's it. And then braking, again, some pretty abrupt motion. And I would have to tweak the filters a little bit because that's not quite realistic, but at least it gives you an idea that that is high frequency content motion, the braking and the brake release. Now when I am in a continuous turn on ground, just driving around in circles, not that anyone would ever want to do it, but you know, might happen, then look at it from the top. I'm trying to pause it here. Unfortunately, when I pause, I don't have a mouse, so I will have to do it like this. Really not the most elegant way, but the center of gravity is in the middle of the aircraft. And the rotation, the point of rotation when turning on the ground is if you use the main gear and you extend the line outwards from one axis to the other, then you reach a point somewhere here. There's a line. And you do the same for the nose gear. There's the axis of the nose gear, you extend that line, you get an intersection. And that is the point around which the aircraft is turning. Now, as you can probably guess, that the center of gravity is closer to that point than the pilot's position. He's about, in this case, probably 20-30% further away, and an airliner that is a lot more. And so there's two key differences. This guy experiences more forces because he's further away from the center of rotation, and he also experiences forces to the side and to the front, whereas the center of gravity experiences forces only to the side. Now take a look at what the platform is doing. I hope it works now. As you can see, the platform is tilted to the side, but it's not tilted to the front or the back, and that is what I would call a smoking gun. This is basically a very strong indication that the motion data in this case comes from the center of gravity and not from the pilot's reference position. Otherwise, it should be tilted forward. So this is my, I would say, key argument against using this method of shifting the center of rotation on your platform to simulate different positions on the vehicle, because when you do that, you have quite a nice effect about the short-term motion, like the high frequency content. The low frequency content is categorically different because the center of gravity experiences lateral forces, whereas the pilot up front experiences lateral and longitudinal forces, and that cannot be generated just out of thin air if you ignore the information about the motion in the very first place. And it can also not be displayed by just changing the center of rotation of your platform, because that is not a rotational thing that is keying here. Okay, so that was it. I hope you liked this little brief introduction into the ground model of this algorithm. There's a lot more to tweak because I haven't spent all that much time tweaking the ground model at all. And there's one also key point in my attempt of making a motion queuing algorithm, and it is that I will have to categorically separate the flight motion data, motion queuing, from the ground motion queuing. There's a flight model that I will implement and that will do all the flying things, and then there's a ground model that I will implement that will do all the ground things, but these are categorically different. They have different gains and different offsets, and I will have to fade from one over to the other in basically the 2 seconds after touchdown, and I have to find some clever way how to do this. But the key point here is I don't want the same behavior in flight that I want in ground. It would be less than ideal, to say the least, in both cases. So I want a good solution for flight and ground developed separately and then fade over from one to the other the 2 seconds after touchdown. So goodbye, take good care, and enjoy this beautiful hobby.